So, hello everybody, it's Steve Bates at the BIA. I'm joined by Laura Collister today for July's Brexit webinar. You can see from the welcome and agenda that I'm going to talk a little bit about the negotiations that are taking place on the Brexit deal today. Lots and lots of activity in the UK end in the last 3 weeks, and some more updates from the European Union side, particularly stuff from the EMA and Commission, and then we'll update on what we're doing and what we think is going on for the summer before taking some questions. So if I may, those of you who follow us regularly, I'm having some people ask for me to go back to the days when I talked about the Dallison dynasty, so I might do some dynasty analogies next time round. But only 3 weeks ago, I think someone said to me, well, Steve, you came on and did a webinar and you said, who knows where we'll be in 2 weeks' time? And it's 3 weeks on from the last time we did this, and thinking back all that time in history, it was a time when England weren't any good at penalty shootouts, where Boris Johnson was in the UK cabinet, David Davis was in the UK cabinet, so it feels like a long time ago, and quite a bit has changed, but they are available on the web, and that's on our YouTube channel if you want to catch up on the last time's one, but I think it's pretty out of date given how things have moved on, and we should pile into that. If I could just bring you up to speed this week on negotiations between the UK and the EU. Here's Michael Barnier with the new UK Secretary of State for exiting the EU, Dominic Raab. The discussions have started. They are focusing on the withdrawal agreement. That's the deal to get the UK out of the EU rather than the future state, which is obviously what the UK have been talking about in their white paper recently, and mainly on the issue of the border in Ireland and how to maintain, how to get that part of the deal done. The Prime Minister did a speech in Belfast this morning, and there were reactions from that in the Commission this afternoon. I think we also saw today the first reactions to the Brexit White Paper from the negotiating team. I think it would be fair to say they were polite. They said that they would have a look at it, but I don't think it meant that there was an immediate breakthrough or a suggestion that this would be exactly how the deal will be done. But I think it shows that the negotiations have happened and are starting to move into a new phase, and obviously with a new character from the UK side there. I think it's clear that because it's been a bit slow during spring while the UK has decided what to do as its policy, there is now a clearing of the decks and quite a lot of work at official level on negotiations through the summer, with the target of meeting some dead milestones in September. And maybe if I could just set out those dates. Quite soon the UK Parliament goes into recess, goes away on holiday, and I think that between then and the 20th of September, where there may be an informal summit, that could be the discussion at which there could be a crunch point. So I think that's the weeks of work that are going on. They're obviously still working towards the European Council in October, but we've also got the one in December in case it doesn't get to that. So I think it's going to be a key period in the coming few weeks around whether negotiations can progress, and I think we'll see them moving quite fast, or it'll become clear that they're not working in the next 4 to 6 weeks. From a UK perspective, if I can cast your minds back to nearly 3 weeks ago, I know we've had good weather in the UK, but during the World Cup, there was a meeting in Chequers from the UK Cabinet, where the UK government finally managed, it thought, to agree with itself, and they put a statement out, and this was the key points of that meeting. Free trade area for goods was the big idea, and maintaining a common rule book for goods with ongoing harmonisation was the big thing that came out of that. So I think that was a key moment in the UK government deciding which way it wanted to go forward. There was, of course, quite a lot of fallout from that, with the Foreign Secretary and the Secretary for exiting the EU unable to support the position of the Prime Minister and the government, resigning from the government, and new appointments had to be made as a result of that. Dominic Raab becoming the new Secretary of State for exiting the EU, and the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson resigning, being replaced by the Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt, which means that there's a new Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, as well as a new Minister for Dex EU, Chris Heaton-Harris, who replaced Steve Baker, who also resigned. So a big change up there, but I think we've then We then spent our time digging into the white paper, and Laura, who's joining us from Brussels today, had an interesting day looking through the white paper, the detail of the policy, and has some analysis as to how we should look at it from an industry perspective. Laura.
Thank you. So the white paper is obviously a statement of UK government's policy. So it's what they would like to do and intend to do, but it's also only their perspective and is subject to negotiation. So whilst it reflects lots of the detail of for our sector, it's not the final deal. It is policy, which hopefully might make it to be the final deal, but it's a good starting point. So BIA did do an industry briefing, which is available on our website, which has all the detail for the sector. There is an awful lot of detail around our specific asks, around regulatory cooperation and being part of the European Medicines Agency, and for one series of tests. I'm not going to go through it all, it's all on here, and it is also in our briefing. But let's think of all the industry sectors to get detail in the paper. We were one of those that got the most detail, which reflects the complexity of the industry and also shows the understanding of government of the issues that we're facing, the importance of the sector to government, and probably sort of reinforces how our work is sort of landing with our departments and then into the other government departments. So as I was saying, there's detail on European Medicines Agency, details around testing and responsible persons. On science and innovation, there was a proposal for a science and innovation accord, which includes Horizon Europe, which is the successor to Horizon 2020, and the European reference networks. There was also further clarification around the transition or implementation period, around what goods on the market and when that becomes a good on the market. But there is, all this detail is in our briefing document, which is on our website. Equally, so whilst it had all made it into that white paper, there was also discussion that David Davis had an alternative white paper, and that appeared on the website Conservative Home. And then, so here are just a few of the paragraphs there, which equally reflect all our issues. So it's good to see that our key points reflected in both versions of the white paper, as well as, of course, Labour Party policy, which we've also talked about in the past. So there is quite a lot of consistent discussion on our issues. In the House of Parliament this week, it's been a very busy week. The customs bill was in Parliament on Monday, and there were a series of amendments which tabled by Eurosceptic MPs who were concerned about the white paper being seen as Remainy. These 4 amendments government accepted, saying they're consistent with the white paper, but equally they also defeated a number of potential amendments only by 3 votes. And with a reduced majority, with pro-EU Conservatives voting against us, but bolstered by Labour Brexiteer MPs voting with UK government. So it's been a bit of a messy time with with the customs bill. Tuesday saw the trade bill in Parliament. Again, government was very focused on some specific amendments, and managed to defeat them all. But the one that got through was around medicines regulation, which was tabled by Philip Lee, who was the Justice Minister, who resigned a few weeks ago, and he tabled an amendment seeking UK participation in the European Medicines Regulatory Network and to have that part of the trade bill. That passed through because it was supported by the opposition and then the Conservative rebels. So the Labour Party Brexiteers, who hadn't previously voted with Conservative government, were here. They didn't do that this time, and that's why it passed through. The bill started in the Commons, so it needs to go to the House of Lords. But if you remember at the previous webinar, we talked about government accepting a medicines regulation amendment to the withdrawal bill, which was in the House of Lords. So I think our hope would be is that it remains within the bill in the laws, and the laws accept it, and it is accepted there. But we will obviously be following that very closely. When that came out, we did put out a statement welcoming it, showing that, as I was saying, medicines and our sector had made it into the Brexit White Paper, both Brexit White Papers, and it also shows now the support of Parliament for the sector and for medicines remaining part of the European Medicines Network. So there's some consistent support coming around. Also, not quite published, but announced this week was the Trade Secretary Liam Fox announced a series of consultations on post-Brexit trade negotiations. So they've been announced, but not yet published. So there's going to be 4 on UK, Australia, and New Zealand, and another one on the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, seeing whether it's something the UK should potentially seek to join. When these come out, we'll be looking at how we respond as BIA for the sector. And one of the things we've been considering doing is whether we do a roundtable with some members and potentially with the Department for International Trade around what to inform our response. So any members who would be interested in being part of that, be really grateful if you could let me know. So when we set a date and decide to go ahead with it, I can include you in that.
Thanks, Laura. So I think if you think about it, planning for success, lots of good detail in the UK policy document. They're often negotiate about it, and UK Parliament supportive of issues of our issues when it comes before them on some fairly close votes. I think the other thing that's emerged at the moment is not only, if you like, the plan for success, but also more clarity on what happens if there isn't a deal or there isn't success. So no deal preparation, and the Prime Minister, Theresa May, speaking at the liaison committee, said that the government will be stepping up its preparations in case there is a breakdown in negotiations. And this is the key bit for us, that they'll be issuing technical notification to UK businesses on what they need to do in a no-deal scenario over August and September. They're expecting to publish up to 70 of these, and there will be earlier information given for specific business concerns where preparation might take time. And for those of you who know that we've been keen to understand what the future scenario might be, and also what we might have to do if there isn't a deal, I think it will only be a matter of days, if not weeks, before we see at least some of the thinking for our sector from the government around what they'll do in a no-deal scenario. So hold on to your hats for that. But I think we are now expecting to see some stuff coming quite soon. And I thought it might just be useful to give you an update on what we were asking the government to do when we concluded the webinar last month, and where we've got to on those. So this is what we said in June we were pushing for before the end of July, and I suppose I put it into three groups here. We asked for the inclusion of medicines into the Brexit White Paper, and I think that's been achieved, and you can see from Laura's briefing and detail that there's quite a lot of our issues in the white paper, which we're pleased about. And we've asked for an agreed position on what goods on the market means in the UK for our sector. I think we're very close to getting that from a UK perspective, but we're just dotting the I's and crossing the T's before coming back to you with that. These middle set of things, clear public guidance from the HRA on how they'll regulate an event of no deal, recognition of EU marketing authorisations, batch release, and a readout from the EY survey for those who participated, fall into the bucket of what I would hope we might see something on if and when the UK government publishes its no deal scenario for our sector. And I think I would say I'd expect something along these lines. I don't know what is coming, but stand by. I think this stuff is going to be around in the next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I mean, I don't know exactly, but I would expect to see it in the August timeframe. And then at the bottom, we were seeking progress on a mutual recognition agreement and progress on border issues, specifically for medicines. I'm not sure that we've seen as much progress as we would like on those ones, but I thought it was just useful. And I think so we've got some bits, other bits are quite close to coming, and other bits are a bit further away. From an EU perspective, I think we've seen initial European reaction to the white paper in the last few days, and I don't think there's any surprise to see that it's being analysed, it's being talked about, but I think the EU are consistent in their positioning, which is fundamental for freedoms of the single market need to be upheld. They're happy to have a talk about most things as long as it's within the frameworks and reference that they've already set out. But I think they are watchful and mindful of the political fragility of the UK government on this, and I thought the words were the tone was conciliatory, but the message was the same today from Barnier. I don't know because I'm not in the negotiations as to whether there is any movement, and you can read it externally as good as I can. But I think we're starting to see that reaction. But I think what's also been really helpful, and I'm really thankful to my colleagues around Europe, is that national biotech associations have commented on the UK government's white paper in a very positive way. We've had comments from John in Europa Bio, from our French colleagues, from German colleagues, Italian colleagues, Dutch colleagues, and Swedish colleagues, which we've been able to share with the with UK ministers, and I think it's encouraging to see that we are all lined up as a sector and keen to see what we've always asked for delivered through negotiations. So I hope that that's been helpful, and I certainly want to thank colleagues from other parts of Europe who have come out and commented positively on the positive movement I think we've seen from the UK government in this stuff. So that's been very helpful. The other thing we've seen in the last couple of weeks is the European Medicines Agency published their survey of marketing authorization holders. If you're in regulatory, I'm sure you've seen the detail of this, and it basically said you need to keep going, you need to up the pace to get ready for a no deal, you need to get the stuff done as soon as possible, and please don't wait till the last minute to do this, because we're likely to be a bit busy packing and moving to Holland in the first quarter of next year. So that's my summary of this. This is on the website and is there. And the other thing that the Commission did yesterday to welcome the new Secretary of State for exiting the EU was they said that they did a brief publication on their preparedness for no deal, and this is just the rag out of the paragraph which looks at nearest to our sector. As you can see, it's fairly straightforward, and it's seen in a very legal light. Interesting choice of phraseology. Marketing authorization holders and actors in the supply chain have to prepare for this situation, in particular by ensuring that necessary testing facilities are available in the EU. From my perspective, as you know, we've always put the needs of patients, public health at the centre of our thinking, and it doesn't seem to start from this paragraph from a perspective of what's the right thing to do for patients in the EU or the UK, which is perhaps what you'd hope to see. But anyway, there you go. It's there, and I think we'll see some more of this. So that's the position we see from the EU. I'll hand back to Laura for an update on where we've got to and what we've been doing as the BIA.
Thank you. So quick run through what we've been doing over the last month. So on Monday this week, we had, along with the ABPI, our Brexit League network. This was a member-only meeting where we have an update from government. We had this from DEXU and from an official from the Border Delivery Group this month. And then we have an industry-only discussion. It's a very open meeting, and I think it was the first time many companies had spoken to the Border Delivery Group who was seeking engagement. We've also continued all our industry and government meetings. There's a ministerial meeting on the 19th also saying that could be ministerial meeting number 19 for Brexit, but it was actually on the 19th. That was yesterday. That was the EU relationship group, which used to be the UK-EU Life Sciences Steering Group. We've continued having regular regulatory meetings with government on planning, and we also have had further trade meetings, including one on intellectual property and life sciences, which involves Department for International Trade. We did, as I mentioned before, a briefing for members on the white paper, and we've also been doing more media outreach, including Newsnight this week, which included a couple of our members, AstraZeneca and Key Pharma, as well as Steve. The report is available on YouTube if you want to look at that. In terms of, oh, that's the pictures. In terms of what we're doing next, even though it's August, I always kind of think doing government affairs that August is going to be quiet, but not expecting it to be particularly quiet this year. Obviously, negotiations on the white paper, well, hopefully have been starting this week, and there's been talk about in the EU of them continuing through August. Therefore, we will be tracking those and providing any input and insight as required. Government's obviously been talking a lot of no deal planning, with 70 notices coming out in August and September, and those for industries that need longer planning coming out earlier. We will be working, hoping to be part of those announcements, ensuring that they're communicated to members and engage with government as required on the development of those, and provide a link if needed. I mentioned the Department of International Trade consultation. We'll start looking at how we respond to that. Today I'm in Brussels because it's our European Industry Coalition, and we're looking at how we develop that further, and BIA will remain engaged with that. We decided the other day that we would like a Brexit lead network in September and then again in November. So we're going to start planning September's meeting, hopefully with another update from DEXU and potentially another speaker. And then there will be also likely be another EU relationship group in September. Plus, we'll be seeking to bit further media engagement following the Newsnight piece earlier this week. Quick reminder here, I think we had this a few times in the last one, is whatever happens with the white paper, with the amendments in Parliament, we haven't moved away from our position, which is being part of the European Medicines Agency. We are very fixed to that, no matter what the no deal planning is. Our view is that we will still be advocating for this, advocating for frictionless borders, movement of people, maintaining brain circulation, and continued engagement with Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe, and also the European Investment Bank and fund and future funding areas.
Thanks, Laura. So last question, last slide, and then I'll take some questions. Do type them in, please, if you want to. If you've got any comments or views, or we haven't made something clear. In summary, I think we've had a successful month in the sense that the industry position is central to the UK government's white paper, and I'm told some of our issues were even part of the Chequers discussion amongst the cabinet. When our issues have been put in Parliament, we've seen support in the House of Commons for our position around medicines regulation, which is helpful. I think we're into a different era because we've now got the white paper out and the European Union are reacting to it, the EU 27 are reacting to it, but we've also got no deal planning going up a gear in the UK and to some extent in the EU, and I think I'd mark your cards for I think some more substantive stuff on this is likely in the next few weeks from the UK, and that's probably my big takeaway from now. There's key negotiations going on over the summer. We may go into one of those quieter phases where we don't see it, but I think there will be activity amongst officials in Brussels and Westminster, and I think it's important to note that UK political environment remains fragile, continuing to see question marks as to whether whether the Conservative Party Brexiteers will seek to bring a vote of confidence in the Prime Minister, or whether there could be a change endeavouring to move the UK policy from that which was outlined in the White Paper. Don't know, but we'll see. So I hope we're getting a little bit more clarity for you on some of this. I know it's as clear as mud, but I hope that that's been helpful, and happy to take some questions, which Rihanna is now going to show me, and I will then see what we can do. So I read the EU. So let's start at the top. Having read the EU papers on preparation for no deal, I can see no reference to acceptance that goods placed on the market pre-Brexit can still be sold after Brexit. Can we get clarity on this, please? As I thought this had been previously stated by both sides. So my understanding of this and my clarity on this is that if there is no deal, if there is a cliff edge, then the position in the UK will be that which the UK government chooses to do. There doesn't need to be an agreement, and the position with the EU will be the position that that they seek to articulate. I think that as part of no deal planning that we'll see from the UK side, I hope that there will be clarity on the rules and how things will operate, and I believe that those will be sensible and pragmatic. I think that you're likely to see something around that quite soon. I don't, the Prime Minister said it will be August or September, with early stuff for sections that need planning. So I think we've got clarity, or we'll be getting clarity on that quite soon from the UK. I think the question of goods on the market in a transition, and what the definition of that is when the UK is a third country but operating under transition, if a withdrawal deal is signed and a deal is done, even if it's not the future arrangements deal, is still one that's that we are looking at. So apologies, I can't provide clarity on that. Perhaps we should dig back in and see if people want some more of that in coming time. The white paper, does the white paper imply that GMP and EU QP PVs will still be based in the UK after Brexit? That is the ask of the UK government, that there is one set of rules and there is continued participation in the regulated sector. I think the moment that's obviously at some distance from what is being said by the European Commission, who are hard over on a no deal scenario and asking people to get ready for it by next March. So and the question that we've got is, if you imagine we've got essentially three states. We've got the state that we're in now, we have potentially a state which is transition period, and then we have a future state period. At the moment, the UK is now clear that it wants to be in and engaged in the future state period, but has nearly completed a withdrawal agreement which provides for a transition, when your point is not where you can't do QP from the UK into the EU. So we have a sort of step down before we step back up again. And sorry if this is a bit confusing. So that's not ideal as we stand here, and I think we'd be keen that the implementation period looked more like an agreed future state with greater participation, but that's all for negotiation, and that isn't clear at the moment. So what you have for clarity is what the EMA are saying. That's the position of the EU. And I hope that we will get to a UK position on what no deal would look like quite soon. But of course, we want neither of those. We want there to be a deal based on the principles we've outlined, which we hope would be a better and happier place for everybody. But we realise that that's not yet happened, and may not happen in time, or may not happen at all, but may happen a deal could happen quite close to a deadline, which is not great for companies planning the real world. And I realise how unhelpful some of this is, but it's the best we've got. Do you have any sense of whether that the 11th hour we might get a form of MRA between the EU and UK on GMP? You're asking me to speculate wildly, which I'll happily and freely do, but it's only my guesses on this. My sense is that there's a hell of a lot of detail to be got done, so I think the chances of things being done at the last minute stands a high chance. And could things come out pragmatically at the last minute with some sort of deal done? Possibly, but I realise that doesn't help people who've got to make business decisions now. If a deal's done at 5 to midnight on some day in the middle of March, we're pushing for as much clarity and as much of this as soon as we can, but I'm not sure. Supply chain management. Delays expected in shipping and flying. Will there be priorities in shipping medicines captured by the government through the different ports, especially for cold chain materials? I think what I can say on this is I think that there is serious consideration being given to supply chain management by all sections of the supply chain. We're obviously closest to members who are manufacturers, and I've had meetings with others who work more closely with wholesalers and pre-wholesalers and people like that, and I think that there is some sophisticated analysis ongoing as to how best to do this. I would expect to see some more detail on this and some more thinking on this from the UK government quite soon as part of the no deal piece. Will transition still happen with a hard Brexit? So another question here, will transition still happen with a hard Brexit? If there is a cliff edge Brexit, there is no transition, there is just crash out. We go from being a member of the EU to not being a member of the EU overnight, and then none of the things that are in the transition deal apply, and it is back to WTO rules and lots of other things. We don't really know what we're doing, which is why we don't want a crash out position. Whether something would be cobbled together at the last minute on elements of it, I don't know. Things to keep planes flying, because what would you do if a plane was in the air? I don't know. But for simplicity's sake, if there is a crash out Brexit, there will be no transition. If there is a future arrangement, a future agreement, then there will be a transition period dictated by the withdrawal agreement, which will be part of the overall deal. Apologies if I've been confusing. Does the white paper concentrate on finished goods medicines as opposed to the timely supply of raw materials in the inbound supply chain to and from the UK? Good question, Matthew. The white paper deals with the supply of goods in general. Most of the detailed comments pertain to the status of regulatory alignment. Regulatory alignment in goods, and therefore one set of rules. So I take that to mean things that are at all stages of manufacture, and the rules that cover those parts of the manufacturing supply chain into finished pharmaceuticals. So yes, I think they are covered by the goods definition in the white paper. Our no deal Brexit plan and AstraZeneca's is apparently, from news this week, is to build up stocks in the EU 27. From the answer to my previous question, at the moment it's not clear whether we could sell those stocks. So I think it will be easier to answer this question once we have clarity as to what the UK's answer as to how it will handle its own no deal position. You can imagine that, and let me say, you know, if it was me, you might say, well, they'll be pragmatic, they'll accept EU product, and that will be okay for the UK, but we need the UK to say that. So therefore, building up supplies which are under the existing regulatory arrangements, if those were to be accepted by the UK, would be a sensible way forward. Let's see where they get to. If you want a phone call with me on this, perhaps I can help you on this one. I think that's about as far as we've got. I hope some of that has been useful. I suggest that we keep going. Apologies that this is still not entirely clear, and we've got various moving parts. We've got the proposals in the white paper. We have documents that are coming out which are guidance from the EMA, and we are trying to help you towards what we think might be coming from the UK without it actually having arrived yet. So apologies if there's lots going on. Laura was very clear about the stages that we've got going on for September. We're planning some activity in September. This is the other things that we've got going on. So if you're around in August, we'll do another one of these on August the 17th, and it'll be interesting to see where we're at there. Various events through September. The next Brexit webinar in September the 28th, and the Bioscience Forum you might want to put in your diaries for October the 18th, our main event of the autumn season. If you're not a member but you're interested in joining the BIA, do please contact Jane. I hope you're finding this useful, and we can continue. Be able to engage even further with BIA activity and go to some of the meetings if you join and become a member. And as I say, the next one of these we'll do on Friday, 17th of August. I hope that's been useful. Thank you very much, and speak to you next time. Thank you.